Following the release of his 2020 album After Hours, The Weeknd would enter an entirely new era, both sonically and creatively. After briefly experimenting with an electronic sound on After Hours, Abel would officially go all in on a synth-heavy style with his fifth studio album, Dawn FM. While still telling a cohesive story and following a narrative, the record flows in a style as if the listener is tuning into a radio station on a late night drive. Tracks play one after another synchronistically. However, the story is pieced together by the radio host Jim Carrey, who acts as a narrator. The electronic and synth sounds on the album help convey the cold, sorry state that Abel finds himself in. After dying from a broken heart on the previous record, the follow-up to After Hours sees The Weeknd venture on a path to the afterlife in a purgatory-like setting. While on his way to the great beyond, Abel reflects on his past mistakes with his former love on various dance pop and electro ballads as he is guided to his final destination. Through the pain and sorrow that he has faced, detailed on After Hours, Abel's final destination is where he will be free from all pain, both physical and emotional. However, in order to free his soul, Abel must kill his ego, reflect on his broken heart, and forgive himself for his troubled and sinful past before achieving eternal bliss. Acting as the soundtrack to The Weeknd's transformation as a dark and tortured soul, venturing into the light and seeking eternal ecstasy, this is the story of Dawn FM. On March 20th, 2020, The Weeknd would release what is widely regarded as his biggest album yet, in After Hours. When you drop a record that is so highly praised, like After Hours was, there's a lot of pressure on an artist to follow up that album with something just as good, or at least on par. However, what many great artists have done in the past, rather than trying to redundantly recreate the same energy seen on a previous album, is take a complete left turn and change their sound entirely. Look at Kanye West, for example. In 2010, he would drop My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, an album that was very much praised and highly regarded amongst critics. Now, what did Kanye decide to drop as a follow-up to Dark Fantasy? Yeezus. While The Weeknd's follow-up to After Hours wouldn't be as drastic of a change sonically, it still definitely would be a different style. Just a few months after the release of After Hours, Abel would say in an interview with Rolling Stone in September that he might have an album ready to go by the time that the quarantine was over. And we gotta take ourselves back to 2020 and remember how this whole COVID-19 situation was going on, and the quarantines, the health hazards, etc. And a lot of artists would take inspiration from this dark state of the world at this point in time and channel that isolation, that fear, that anxiety, and turn it into art with music. One of the best examples being, in my opinion, Bring Me the Horizon's post-human survival horror record. However, this project that Abel was working on that was inspired by COVID would soon be scrapped, as Abel would go on to say that it was almost too dark and emotionally detrimental to him while he was working on it. Now, I can't even imagine how dark this album had to be lyrically if Abel, the same guy who wrote House of Balloons, had to stop working on it because it was affecting his mental health that much. But regardless, this concept that was set to follow up After Hours would be scrapped. And as 2021 began, Abel would officially start working on the album we would eventually know as Dawn FM. With electronic and synth elements being briefly explored on After Hours, this record would see Abel dive headfirst into that synth pop sound. He would first tease the record in May of 2021, telling Variety that if the last album was the After Hours of the night, then the dawn is coming. As Abel would receive various awards for his work on After Hours throughout 2021, he would continuously hint at this dawn coming very soon in many of his acceptance speeches. Fans would get their first taste of this new era in the Weeknd's discography on August 1st, when Abel would post a clip on social media of a new track with sci-fi-esque visuals. The song Previewed would drop 5 days later, as the single Take My Breath would release on August 6th along with a music video. The MV would complement the electronic sound of the track excellently, and also help set the tone for the theme of this forthcoming album. While fans would get this first single in August, the full album would not release for a few months. However, holding them over was Abel's many features in the latter half of 2021. Abel would have some pretty big collaborations being featured on Kanye West's track Hurricane, Post Malone's track One Right Now. However, the song that would best fit Abel's new vibe with the Dawn would be the track Moth to a Flame. A collaboration with Swedish House Mafia, the track would line up right with the energy that was seen on the previously released Take My Breath, and further prep fans for the Dawn to come. In 2021, Abel would consistently run his Apple Music One radio show, and in October, he will go on to say that the album was completely finished. So what exactly was stopping the release? Abel would go on to say that he was just waiting on a few characters that are key to the narrative. Elaborating later on this comment, Abel would add regarding these characters that there are some people that are near and dear to me, some people that inspired my life as a child, and some that inspire me now. The main collaborator that we can infer Abel was hinting at was the narrator for this album, Jim Carrey. As stated in the dramatic intro of this video, the album kind of plays as if you're taking a drive and you're listening to the radio while you're traveling, and Carrey acts as the radio host. The Weeknd is a noted fan of Jim Carrey's work and first saw him in the movie The Mask, a film that really inspired him. Carrey and Abel first linked up in late 2019. They met each other through mutual friends, and Abel would literally drive him around and play him after hours before it was officially released. When reflecting on the moment, Jim Carrey would go on to say that he felt like he was in heaven, and I don't blame him. I really wish I can go back and listen to that album for the first time too. But ever since that meetup, they became really good friends. Following the release of After Hours, Abel would begin work on the follow-up record, and would soon ask Jim Carrey to be a part of it. The offer would initially be declined by Jim Carrey. He would tell Abel, like, I just don't want to work like that anymore, and despite Abel very much trying to convince him, being like, you could just record on your phone, you could just say a few lines, you don't have to do much, Carrey would politely decline. Following that convo, though, Jim would recall waking up in the middle of the night and thinking of lines that he would be saying while playing the role of a narrator in between songs, and soon he would record some of those lines and send them over to the Weeknd. He would tell Abel to use all the lines, a few of them, or absolutely none of them, leaving the creative control completely in the Weeknd's hands. Jim would later be very grateful and satisfied with his performance and usage on the record, saying that he was thrilled to be a part of the Weeknd's symphony. Carrey's contributions to the project, as well as the album's name, would officially be revealed to the public on January 3rd, as Abel would post a trailer for the record. In the video, Abel is seen driving in an elder form of himself, before crashing and waking up in a reality that sees him being dragged around by women in red cloaks. Through this video, fans would also find out that this record would feature words and work from the likes of Quincy Jones, Tyler the Creator, Jim Carrey, Lil Wayne, and One O Trick's Point Never. But also, through the release of this video, fans would also know that the album was set to be called Dawn FM. The video would end with a flash of a date, reading January 7th, the date of the album's release. Between the time of this trailer dropping and the 7th, Abel would post an additional teaser revealing the track list for this project. Finally, on January 7th, 2022, The Weeknd would release his 5th studio album, Dawn FM. At 16 tracks long, the album furthers the After Hours story in a groovy 80s fashion with heavy usage of synthesizers and a psychedelic radio aesthetic. Abel would preview the album on an Apple Music Twitch stream, where that older version of himself that was seen in the teasers for this record would be dancing in the middle of a nightclub to the new tracks. The album cover also features The Weeknd as an aged, older-looking version of himself, alluding to the concept of his past aging him and his time as a mortal nearing the end. Dawn FM is the soundtrack to Abel's journey, as he goes from life on Earth to the afterlife. Taking place in a purgatory-like situation, Abel is guided by the sweet sounds of radio as he travels to a place of spiritual freedom. Abel has recently discussed how following his next album, which will be the follow-up to Dawn FM, he'll be retiring the Weeknd name and persona and start releasing music under his birth name, Abel Tesfaye. Connecting that concept to this album, Dawn FM sees Abel reflecting on his past, coping from heartbreak and letting go of his past mistakes, letting go of that toxic legacy that is The Weeknd. At the end of After Hours, The Weeknd dies of heartbreak. Dawn FM is his reflection period, his state of paralysis as he elevates to the afterlife and sheds himself of his past sins. Following the release of Dawn FM, Abel would embark on the After Hours Till Dawn tour, which had originally been a tour for After Hours, but was postponed in 2020 due to the lockdowns. The tour would be a phenomenal showing of both Abel's past and current hits, with Mike Dean helping remix The Weeknd's old tracks to make them fit that electronic Dawn FM vibe. Abel would also reveal following the release of this album that After Hours and Dawn FM were a part of a new trilogy. Abel's career started off with likely one of the most iconic trilogy of projects in music history. And with After Hours and Dawn FM connecting conceptually, one more album should be on the horizon to finish out the story of The Weeknd's spiritual journey into the light. While we understand the basic concepts of this record and even this new trilogy so far, Abel's spiritual journey is better understood by breaking down this album track by track and looking at the lyrics of these hits. So tune your radios to 103.5 Dawn FM as I explain The Weeknd's journey into the great beyond. Introducing us to our story and setting of the album is the intro track, Dawn FM. A very dramatic, electronic instrumental sets the vibe and tone of this album on this inaugural song. Abel, following his death from a broken heart on After Hours, is now in a state between life and the afterlife. This personal journey he finds himself on is one that he must embark on alone, as he is no longer breathing. While Abel does have a final destination on this journey, that being the afterlife, this is more of a spiritual, metaphorical journey. It's one of self-discovery. Following his heartbreak on After Hours, Abel has become a nihilist, begging for someone or something to make him escape his pessimistic outlook on the world and love. This state, Abel's current mindset right now at the start of this journey, is showing just how much work is going to need to be done in order for him to reach the afterlife, to find that inner peace. In other words, a lot of work to be done in terms of Abel's spiritual recovery. Ending out this track is an interlude by our narrator, Jim Carrey. The synth sounds fade away and Carrey's monologue begins, with a voice effect put on his vocals to make it sound like you're really listening to this album over the waves of radio. As the radio host of this station, Carrey will act as Abel's spiritual guide as he travels down the road in his car, listening to the radio and driving into the light. The radio station is called 103.5 Dawn FM, and as Abel drives into that pre-mentioned light, the sounds heard are set to guide him to his fate, to his soul's final destination. A stinger for the radio station plays, performed by Abel himself, before we reach track 2, Gasoline, which begins with some powerful synth keys on the intro. While the intro track established our setting, with Abel being in that purgatory-like state, we start to get into the actual story of this album with this second song. As this is a spiritual journey that Abel is embarking on, we are starting out with him reflecting on his former love, the very girl that he technically died for. Reflection is a key part of self-healing and growth, and as we see, Abel needs a lot of that. As we start our story here, the state he is in, it's a rough one. High off his ass, wide awake at 5 a.m., Abel is nearly paralyzed and lifeless as he calls out for his girl for comfort. He describes himself as hopeless, in pain, and a nihilist, as Abel claims that he would welcome death over the miserable state he finds himself in at this point in time. Due to his willingness to die, Abel leaves his partner with some instructions, telling her that if he does pass, simply wrap him in the sheets he is currently laying in and light his body on fire to burn. This further proves Abel's nihilistic thought process, as he truly believes life is meaningless following after hours. Processes following death, such as a funeral or a wake, they don't even interest him anymore because he believes life is that meaningless. Abel uses this girl as a crutch of sorts. He's begging her, not to say he's begging her, to never let him go despite the fact that she's already disconnected from him. He wants her to convince him that life has meaning, to make him not want to die, but Abel lost his faith a long time ago. We get a bigger look into Abel's thought process on life following all the misery he has went through, as he says that life isn't free. He views it almost like a prison. After all that he has been through, living that party lifestyle in Trilogy, finding beauty behind the madness, being a star boy, and even attempting to survive the after hours of his long, toxic nights, Abel is finally at the end of his rope. He has run out of reasons to live as the only person who made sure he didn't OD, who he found a source of happiness from, who kept him here. She doesn't even love him anymore. He tries to change that. On track 3, How Do I Make You Love Me, where Abel goes back in time. Now, as you may remember, After Hours is a tale of Abel coping with the loss of his partner, and essentially not surviving her departure. We quote-unquote go back in time, as Abel says on the first line of this song, where Abel is again just desperate for her to return to him. Abel will do anything for this girl to come back to him. He's talking about how he would travel anywhere he needed to prove his devotion. But his desperation is pretty strange. As someone who is famous, who could typically, kind of get whoever he really wanted, Abel is full-on simping for this girl. He's really seeking attention. Like I said, stars like him, they generally pull pretty damn well because of their status. But here he is, desperate as hell for someone who doesn't even want anything to do with him. This track is really all about Abel pondering how he can get this girl to love him back, as sang on the chorus. The last line on the chorus reads, "and make it last eternally," alluding to the fact that this track, as well as everything post-Gasoline, is pretty much happening as a reflection in this purgatory-like state. Additionally, it plays with the idea that Abel's destination obviously is that location in the afterworld, kind of like heaven, where time is infinite. Now, as we learned on After Hours also, Abel and this girl he's singing about have a long history. He knows her very well. He calls back to lyrics from the track In Your Eyes during the second verse here, when he tells her not to hide, as he knows the real her. But rather than realizing that his words and actions hurt her, and understanding that, hey, she's probably better off without me, Abel proclaims that he can build her back up again and make her whole. He is this thing that she is missing to feel complete. This track has a beautiful, long, electronic outro that directly transitions into track 4, Take My Breath. Now, if you remember, Take My Breath was the first song released as a single for this project on FM. However, this version that's on the album is different than the version released as a single back in August. This one has a lot longer of an intro, and it kind of adds hype to the track, in my opinion, and it brings it more on par with the vibes of this record. Take My Breath is a track where Abel really shows his sinning side. We know that Abel cheated on this girl that he's trying to get to like him back a lot. It was described on After Hours a ton, but for the first time on this record, it's discussed here. Abel's in the club and he sees this girl, and he knows that it's wrong to go with her. She is a temptation to him, but he gives in. He tries to fight it. He acknowledges that this is something wrong to do, but the way she looks into his eyes, all his morals just fade away. This is actually a pretty important part of the album, actually, and it may not seem like it on the surface level, but Abel is doing this whole self-reflection thing, and looking back on his hedonism, on his wrongdoings, on his sinful ways, is a key part of self-growth and understanding just exactly why he deserves his fate, why this girl who he cared so much for rejected him that led to his death. This girl that Abel is cheating with, she's a wild one. Abel describes her as a woman who likes to live on the edge, and she's begging him here to bring her close to suffocation, take her breath away. Irony is seen on the chorus when Abel is saying how this girl is begging him to bring her closer to heaven in terms of feeling pleasure. With Abel now being in purgatory, and nights like the one explained on this track being the exact reason for the love of his life leaving him, her heaven essentially leads to Abel's hell. Following this specific inaugural look into Abel's sinful ways, he owns up to his many wrongdoings on the next track, Sacrifice. Now, The Weeknd, based on the way in which he describes himself on the various albums in his discography, he's a toxic person. He plays off that and owns his cold personality on this track, believing he was destined to be this way due to the climate in his hometown. Abel's confession of sorts is done on this track over a very 80s sounding instrumental that was actually co-produced by Swedish House Mafia. It's got an electro funk guitar on the beat. It's a really phenomenal sound that was achieved here. But Abel now understands through his reflection on Take My Breath why the relationship ended. He lays it out on the pre-chorus. He sacrificed the love of his girl for pleasure in his nightlife. He didn't want to sacrifice their love and their bond, but he's just too addicted to that hookup party lifestyle. He just can't stop. The theme of sacrifices and Abel's demons were seen a lot in the videos made for Dawn FM, specifically the music video for this track. As Abel said, he almost doesn't have control of himself. He can't help but indulge in that party lifestyle, which made him unloyal to his girl in the first place. It's like, in a way, his fate was out of his hands, a concept that lines up with the shots and visuals described previously. Although Abel's girl tried on numerous occasions to keep the relationship afloat, giving him chance after chance and trying to wait on him to become a better man, she could not save him. Abel simply could not change. Now, Abel parties a lot because he has that nihilistic state of mind. The drugs kind of numb him and make him ignore that unhappy side that his sober state has. The drugs and sex help him feel something, a rare feeling for Abel, as he has come to a point where he believes that life is meaningless. Those lines there show the effects of these substances on Abel and kind of shed a light on why he is addicted. He does this shit so he isn't so depressed. But in reality, it is preventing him from reaching that happiness he truly wanted with this relationship. And although Abel ruined their shot at that solid relationship, he wants her to know that he did indeed try to change. However, as hard as he tried, he could not get his shit together and love her the way that he should have. Now, understanding his mistakes and himself being the downfall of their relationship, Abel is in a place to better himself. He's in a place where he owned up to his mistakes, he's becoming a better man, and now he's in the right state of mind where he can go for that one last shot and hope to God that she takes him back. However, it is just too late for Abel to make things right. His sins have taken so much from him, and now the timing is wrong. It's a terrible, devastating scenario to be involved in that is described on track 7. However, prior to track 7 beginning, it is preceded by an interlude of sorts called A Tale by Quincy. This song is almost like a spoken word or a speech, and it is performed by Quincy Jones, who is a music producer that has worked with a lot of iconic artists like Michael Jackson and Frank Sinatra. Quincy opens up about his personal life, specifically his issues with relationships that is rooted from his upbringing as a child. He describes on this interlude how his mom was taken out of his life at a very young age, and his stepmother that he lived with enforced the idea that he didn't need a mother. It is the absence of a female figure during his developing ages that Quincy blames for his problems with relationships and women during his adult life. Quincy, just like Abel, struggled with holding relationships, often cutting girls off when they got too close. According to Quincy, some of it was vindictive, and a lot of it was rooted in fear. However, it was all totally subconscious. Ending this track is the iconic line, "Looking back is a bitch," which perfectly lines up with Abel's position on Dawn FM. He's looking back and reflecting on his past experiences, yet he has no control. He can't reach out and do things differently. He can't change his ways and make things right. He is out of time, as described on the next track. The instrumental on this song, and honestly the track in its entirety, is just so beautiful. Personally, my favorite song off this album. It samples Midnight Pretenders by Tomoko Aran, and the beat is just so sensual and dreamy. It's awesome. And it really makes you feel like you're in a reflection, you're in a dream, as Abel is talking about how he has become a better man, he has changed for the better, and he's going back to his ex for that one last chance. However, he soon finds out that she is no longer available. She is committed to another man, and Abel lost his chance. Rather than trying to use his past as an excuse, Abel highlights his trauma, and after bettering himself, he realizes how badly he has treated those who have loved him. Abel looks back on that time when she was his, but he didn't love her and appreciate her the way he should have. But as much as he has changed, his girl's heart now belongs to someone else, and he can't stop her from loving him. Abel is simply out of time. Although she's no longer available, Abel wants to make it very well known that he will always be around. He'll always be an option if things don't work out between her and her new guy. If her new guy fucks up or hurts her, Abel says he is there and encourages her to come back. Now, opening up and showing his vulnerability is pretty out of character for Abel. Normally he would kind of stuff that inside, try to act cool, play it off, but he cares about this girl so much that he is being open like this. He's laying it all on the line. And if she does grant him that one last chance, he promises he will love her like he should have previously. Yet, Abel remains alone as he travels and furthers his journey into that light in the distance, unable to alter his past mistakes or intervene in the present. And we are reminded of his position in that purgatory-like place when Jim Carrey comes in at the end of this track with another monologue. Carrey mirrors the song's meaning with relationships to Abel's eventual destiny, saying that the listener is out of time. While Abel was of course discussing out of time as a romantic concept, meaning like he's too late to make her his, she's taken now, Carrey is obviously meaning out of time as in a lifespan, which is pretty eerie. He says that more music is to come, but Carrey enlightens us on the process Abel is going to face, mentioning a light in the distance that will soon engulf him with a blissful embrace. When engulfed, Abel will be healed, refreshed, and forgiven from his past, while becoming freed from his trauma and suffering. From this description, we can infer that Abel's final destination is a place resembling that of heaven. However, his journey still continues. As we hit track 8, Here We Go Again, featuring Tyler, the Creator. This track is an interesting one, as Abel kind of veers from being so focused on telling the story of this album, and takes a moment to flex on his achievements in the real world. But Abel is basically on this track making a commentary on love. While he went through pain and suffering with his ex, he has found someone new and is starting the process all over again. Although the love shared between he and his ex eventually caused him a lot of pain, he regrets nothing. Their memories are worth the pain in his eyes, and he'd rather love and lose her rather than never love her at all. But he is allowed to do this because he has found someone who is a new love interest. Basically, Abel is pointing out the levels there are to love. After such a toxic relationship he had with his ex, he was brought a lot of sadness, he was brought a lot of depression, and he longed for her for so long, but after something like that, you're cautious, but here we go again. He's playing the game once again, although he lost so much, and he's feeling that ecstasy that a new relationship will bring. Tyler, the Creator, comes in, disses marriage, says how he is going to need his future partner who wants to get married to sign a prenup, and he leaves. But Abel, following the end of his last relationship, really changed his outlook on life. As we know, he eventually reached that nihilistic state, but he exclaims here that he sees life as a dream. When things seem destined to last forever, they soon eventually fade away, as nothing is certain. While Abel's issues in his past relationship made him despise love in a way, it is a feeling and a need that almost every human being requires. Despite vowing to never love again following his previous heartbreak, like I said, Abel has found someone new. Another radio stinger plays as we head into track 9 on Dawn FM, Best of Friends, where Abel shows some hesitation regarding his new relationship. Now, as we know, Abel's last relationship was very toxic. It was very taxing on him, and throughout the After Hours story, we basically see Abel coping with this heartbreak through drug use, through alcohol abuse, to the point where he eventually overdoses and kills himself. Now, because of that experience, Abel is truly scared of commitment after him and his ex were tore apart. He's really enjoying the dynamic between him and this new girl here. He's happy with it. They're almost like friends with benefits, and he honestly doesn't want to be responsible if he ends up hurting her, because if they get in that relationship, there's always a chance he'll return to his past sinful ways. Abel obviously has a past of trouble with committing to a single person, and he acknowledges that here, stating that he can't get close to her because he will likely break her heart. Abel is running through excuses in his mind as to why he and this girl cannot date. They want different things, etc., but he truly cannot avoid his feelings. He can't fight his emotions. He cares very deeply about this woman. So much so that he even starts to get some paranoia as to whether or not she may be seeing someone else because they aren't officially dating. And we see that paranoia creep in on the next track, Is There Someone Else? Although this relationship with this new girl is fresh, Abel starts to feel as if something is up. He could sense that something is bothering her, and he's picking up on her shady actions because she is doing and saying things that he used to do in his dark past. As described throughout his various albums in his discography, Abel has cheated a whole lot. Abel knows how a cheater operates because he was a cheater. And post-heartbreak from his past relationship, he is facing some paranoia regarding his new girl. On the chorus, Abel poses the question, asking her if she is seeing someone other than him. Despite his reluctance to commit expressed on the previous track, Abel now says that he has feelings, and he wants to keep her close. Abel is a veteran in the love triangle game. He knows that a situation like that is going to hurt everyone involved, not just himself. Abel also realizes through these accusations that, in all honesty, he probably deserves to be cheated on. However, at the same time, he has become a better man. And just because he has done wrong in the past doesn't mean he shouldn't be allowed to eventually find happiness. He wants this new girl to be his forever. But is he her only? In my opinion, this track has one of the more underrated instrumentals on this album, and it beautifully transitions into our next song, Starry Eyes. Abel doubles down on his feelings for this new girl, again clarifying that he is going to commit. He wants to enter a relationship and be monogamous, as opposed to his thoughts first expressed on Best Friends. This girl was there for him when he needed someone. When he was lonely and longing for his ex, she's the one that filled that void. However, just like Abel, we learn that she is also a tortured soul. She has been hurt, she's faced heartbreak, yet Abel declares that he will be there for her and he will handle her with care. I think it's important to clarify Abel's descriptions of this new girl, because as far as we know, this was all reflections, everything's like in purgatory, this isn't really real life. In a way, it's in another reality, but like it's in a more dream-like state post-death. Abel describes her as the girl of his dreams in a very heavenly fashion. It is not crazy to think that on this journey, this angel-like girl was sent his way to help aid him in his journey of self-discovery, even if she ends up hurting him in the end. She's similar to Abel as well. They both are scarred, tortured souls from their past rough relationships. With that commonality, Abel is more attracted to people who share that experience. Yet Abel's new outlook on existence adds a very interesting twist to his passion. Showing how much he cares for this woman, he tells her that after he brings her back to life and builds her back up again from her current broken state, she can kick him to the curb and leave him all alone, heartbroken, just as she originally found him. As we've discussed, Abel has self-admittedly become a nihilist. He's a very pessimistic person after all of the misery he has experienced. He says that in the past he was starry-eyed, meaning that he was overly optimistic and positive relating to love in this scenario. However, now Abel is cynical. and is expecting this relationship, which gives him great joy, to end in hurt and pain. Separating these emotionally heavy and dark tracks is the interlude-esque song, Every Angel is Terrifying. This track takes heavy inspiration from a poem written by Rainer Maria Rilke, and essentially is centered around the idea that angels are so beautiful that if a human being actually saw one, they would not be able to comprehend its beauty, and it would be so foreign that the person would feel fear rather than ecstasy. The poem is recited on the first half of this track, followed by intense synth notes on the intro, but the track changes up following the poetry reading and transforms into a cheeky, comedic ad for something called Afterlife. Many people have speculated that Afterlife will be the third album in this new trilogy with After Hours and Dawn FM, but we shall see. It's a fun little interlude that gives us a second to kind of compose and digest everything we've heard so far. But the story continues on as we hit track 13, Don't Break My Heart. Now committing to this new girl, Abel begs her to handle him with care over an electro-pop beat that was actually produced by Abel himself. Abel is mesmerized by this new girl. She has snatched his soul in his own words, and he is all in on having her become a key part of his life. On the pre-chorus, Abel says that he knows, he just has a feeling that she is right for him. He believes that this relationship is his destiny. However, he is so scarred from his past relationships that he begs this girl, he pleads her, while entering this new relationship, to not break his heart. And this isn't just a polite request, it's more like a warning. Abel has been hurt so many times that he feels as if he cannot physically take another heartbreak. And after talking about this new relationship, he actually begins to open up about his previous one, the very toxic one that we keep referencing that was the main story of After Hours with that ex. He says that he and his ex broke up in the club, calling back to the track Save Your Tears. Abel also says that although he loved her very much, he knew deep down that she was not right for him. Yet, he kept returning to her for acceptance. As the feelings begin to snake in, Abel immediately shuts down all further discussions regarding his ex and quickly shifts over to talking about his new girl once again, almost kind of revealing that he is using her as a way to forget about his past girl. Abel is saying all this to his new love while drinking in the club, with the alcohol helping him open up and expose his fragile heart. And it isn't like Abel just wants to avoid getting hurt again in a relationship. He is literally falling apart. He has been hurt far too many times. Some deserved, some by his own actions. Yet regardless, Abel is in a very destroyed and weak state emotionally. That's why he was cautious about entering a new relationship and opening up his heart to another woman. We even saw that paranoia creep in, showing how many times he has been fucked over. As much as he has fucked other girls over, he's hurt, and hurt people hurt people. Yet, as I said, love is something that everybody needs, and Abel was desperate to feel alive, to feel that need once again, fill the void. And despite his eerie feelings on how he believed the relationship would eventually end, he gave her his everything. And just as Abel predicted, he got exactly what he deserves, as he finds out that his girl has another man on track 14, I Heard You're Married, featuring Lil Wayne. Abel, despite being cautious of love and relationships, was caught up in his feelings and played, just as he has done to many women in the past. After bettering himself and learning from his past behaviors, Abel was screwed over by a woman who he trusted with his heart. He hears and finds out that this girl he committed to not only is seeing someone else, but she is hiding a ring. She is married. And technically, Abel deserves this. After all the girls that he has done this exact thing to, in a way, this is poetic justice. But after bettering himself and chasing true monogamy and happiness, we feel for him. He feels as if he is dumb. He should have known this was all too good to be true, him finally finding peace and happiness in a relationship. He again shows some desperation with this woman, as he did previously with his ex, trying to get her to leave her man, but at the same time he then sloppily disses her, emotionally distressed at this betrayal. He questions why she would even be with her current husband if she doesn't love him and she's not committing just to him. He understands that she has her problems and her reasons, but why wouldn't she just file those papers if she truly had feelings for Abel? And as Abel is asking all these questions, he now feels the very feeling he made all those girls feel over the years. He is forced to think, am I the problem? What went wrong? How could I have done this better to maybe keep her in my life? It's a healing process that he unfortunately has made a lot of people go through due to his own past actions. And while he now understands their pain on a different level, not just understanding, hey, this is a wrong thing to do and I shouldn't have done that, but truly feeling the weight of his previous sins, Abel comes to the conclusion finally that he cannot be with this woman. He's been hurt so many times that to share this woman that he cares so deeply for, he just doesn't have it in him anymore. As much as he cares for her, he's got to let it go. Not act like you're going to leave her, try not to think about her, and indulge in a crazy party life and do all these drugs to make the pain less. He's got to truly let it go, actually grow, develop, and become better from this experience. Now feeling the pain that he caused on many occasions throughout his lifetime, Abel is closer than ever to that light in the distance that acts as the final destination on this ride. After reliving his greatest heartbreak from his true love, entering a relationship with a girl of his dreams who resembled an angel yet had the heart of a demon, the experience in which Abel has endured has enlightened him greatly. The self-reflection reaches a grand conclusion on track 15, Less Than Zero. Over an upbeat disco pop instrumental, Abel fully accepts himself as a flawed, damaged, yet now enlightened soul. Abel addresses his true love, not the angel that was sent his way to make him learn his lesson and develop that self-growth, but the girl who he died for on After Hours. Calling back to a time in which she trusted and cared for him with all her heart, Abel asks her if she remembers when he was her everything. Despite the trust and love she had for Abel, and how many times she gave him those second chances, he couldn't change for her. Although he tried to act as if he was faithful and he was someone that she could trust, Abel was a liar. He was a cheater, and although he is a changed, better man who learned from his mistakes now, there's nothing he could do to undo that damage, and he fully accepts himself and his mistakes here. Abel owns his identity. Rather than trying to cover up or lie about his past or keep those skeletons in the closet, he says he will always be less than zero. He will always be cold. It's who The Weeknd is. She tried her best with him, and no matter what, Abel will always have that love for her. Despite the fact that he messed up in the moment, he couldn't man up and support her the way she needed. Although he was previously heartless, as a changed man, Abel now feels tremendous guilt for being unfaithful to his ex, especially after feeling what that betrayal exactly feels like on this record. He can't get what he did to her out of his head. He can't forget it. And rather than trying to fight it and act like he's an innocent, good person who's never done wrong in his life, Abel would rather be free and accept himself. The good, the bad, and the everything. Abel still pleads with her for a moment after the first chorus. As we know on After Hours, she was unfaithful as well, and she certainly made mistakes in the relationship. Yet, she has officially washed her hands of Abel. She's moved on. After all that they've been through together, she is left, leaving Abel cold to die a lonely death rather than holding him in her arms in his final moments. Although Abel feels as if maybe she should have been there during his final moments just due to all the love and laughs they shared, he understands that she owes him nothing. He hurt her. He betrayed her trust, and at the end of the day, she tried her best with him, and Abel let her down. As the beat fades out, an acoustic guitar ends the track as Abel comes to terms with himself as a cold-hearted, damaged, and broken soul. Through accepting his past, The Weeknd has finally found peace as he is engulfed by the light and freed from all of his trauma, pain, guilt, suffering, and shame. The album and journey ends with track 16, Phantom Regret by Jim. Closing out this record and tying up Abel's journey into the light, Jim Carrey leaves the listener with some words of wisdom in poetic form. He speaks to us as if we're in the Weeknd's position, as if we have passed on and finished our life to the full term. Encouraging us to look back on our actions throughout our lives, Jim asks us to reflect on our grudges, relationships, and overall attitude we held during our days. Overall, his main point is that when it is our time to go, we should go in peace. We never know when it really will be our time to go. So set your soul free from those stupid petty grudges and make sure you avoid that phantom regret. If you die, yet you still have regrets, you can never truly rest in peace. Jim goes on to describe the purgatory that Abel experienced throughout this album. A place after death where time does not exist. Food isn't necessary. You have no allegiance to a country or a group. All that's left is your soul. But where will that soul go? According to Carrey, it all matters whether or not you are haunted by that phantom regret. Until you go in peace, until you let go of that guilt, that shame, that trauma, that pain, that heartbreak, that beef, you must stay in that purgatory. In order to enter heaven and feel that freedom, that release from all your earthly stresses and problems that we all long for, you must kill the ego and accept yourself, flaws and all. The key to happiness is facing the truth and accepting who you truly are to those around you, and most importantly, to yourself. Life is hard, and the problems we face in day-to-day life, often they can get just to be too much, and we could be led down a path to do things like the Weeknd has, like cheat, like lie, like abuse substances. But you don't have to be a slave to your former self. You can better yourself. You can accept who you are, and through that, you can find that inner peace and reach that blissful nirvana. While we all make mistakes, while we're all flawed, that's the human experience. You must first love yourself, and through that, you'll start to feel the abundance of love around you. As Carrey says, you gotta be heaven to see heaven.